Episode number 251, Gluttony Module.
I thank you for your advice, Your Highness.
Cain clasped his hand and bowed toward the collapsing lightning duke for his words. The collapsing lightning duke nodded before staring into Cain's eyes for a while and finally raising his index finger, generating a drop of blood. He began to charge a massive amount of black lightning into it, and once it reached its zenith, he sent it toward Cain. Cain's eyes widened when he saw that drop of blood flash toward him, and it was so fast that before he could do anything, it landed on his shoulder, generating a strange rune in the form of a lightning arc before vanishing beneath his skin. He could not help but frown, since even if he detected no danger from the drop of blood, he did not like people doing things to his body without asking.
Bloodsea had never been a simple place, and right now, the dangers for an outsider like you could not be more serious. When the time comes, the rune will act on its own. If you are lucky, you might not need it.
The collapsing lightning duke's face was pale, making it clear that generating that drop of blood came at a great price. He saw the inquisitive gaze in Cain's eyes, but was not in the mood to answer questions and signaled for Luther to take the young man out. Luther bowed to the collapsing lightning duke and brought Cain to the teleportation matrix. Once they were back on the first floor, he began to speak as they walked toward the exit.
Major Lorifer, there is a reason why the collapsing lightning duke did not give you an explanation about the rune on your shoulder. You should forget it exists and depend only on your power for the trial that would come in the future.
Cain's eyes narrowed when he heard that. He understood the meaning behind the words of the bald man, and while he nodded, he was not the type that would let things slide. Once Cain was out of the Titan Tower and dashing back to his residence, he spoke to the system in his mind.
System, what is the current state of the AI chip module?
Unlike the other modules, the AI chip module would evolve alongside his soul force and would not need his direct intervention. AI chip module has evolved after the breakthrough of Vessel's soul force to the Wave Champion rank. AI chip module. Cellular analysis. Data gathering and analysis. Virtual simulation. Scan force field. Hacking. Cain saw that, and a sharp light appeared in his eyes. Although the only difference in the description was the lack of the word basic, he knew that the power of all the tools had evolved immensely.
System, analyze the foreign energy left inside me by the collapsing lightning duke.
Cain did not think that the collapsing lightning duke had done something to harm him, but leaving things without an answer was not his style. Analyzing. The AI chip module can detect the energy left inside Vessel, but its complexity is at a level beyond the module's current capabilities. A complicated smile appeared on Cain's face as he heard that. The AI chip module should be able to analyze anything at the level of apotheosis. Still, the phenomena that the collapsing lightning duke could give birth to was at a level much greater. Since there was no way to learn its true purpose, Cain followed Luther's advice and forgot about it. He would not expect anything from the rune and would rely on his own power to face anything that would come in the future. Using Sonic Dash, Cain was able to reach his residence very fast, and once he was inside, a somber expression appeared on his face. The trip to Bloodsea would be one full of danger, and he would be dragged into the machinations of a Titan. Although the Blood Duke saved his life, he was not so naive as to think the two had a special relationship. He would not expect this one to be of help, and the only thing he could trust in Bloodsea would be his personal power. Cain adopted a meditative stance in the center of his room and closed his eyes before commanding the system.
System, activate the next module.
The instant he shouted that command, Cain felt a sharp pain in his mind that was soon replaced by a heaviness so massive that it made it hard for him to even think. If Cain's soul force were still that of a wave warrior, the pressure of unlocking the third module would have been so much that he could not even think. Luckily, he was at the level of Wave Champion, and after a few minutes, the unbearable pressure on his mind vanished, and he regained his cognitive abilities. The first thing Cain heard after that was the system telling him the name of the new module. Gluttony Module activated. Unlike the case with the AI chip module and the genetic coda module that existed in a place he could not find and had no visualization of them, the instant he obtained the Gluttony module, he saw a strange dimension inside his soul. It manifested like a dot of light not larger than a grain of rice, but the space inside it was immense, enough to hold a 300-meter-tall building, and in its center there was a multicolored flame. Luckily for Cain, he did not have to wait for long for an explanation about the flame and dimension, since the system soon gave him a thorough description. Gluttony module meant to grant the vessel the ability to transform all things into power for his growth. Tools. Earth Fiend Flame, capable of devouring matter and energy. It can send 5% of all it consumed into the vessel. 10 points of Destiny Force can be used to increase the Earth Fiend Flame's devouring speed by 10% for 24 hours. It can be stacked up to 100 times. 100 points of Destiny Force can be used so the Earth Fiend Flame drives the energy and vitality it generated directly into the vessel's body and energy pool. Training speed is 75% slower than if the vessel takes active control over the energy and vitality. Devourer Dimension meant to hold food for the Earth Fiend Flame. It can hold anything with an energy level beneath the Apotheosis rank. To send living entities into it, they must be paralyzed and unable to resist. The description of the Gluttony module was tricky at times, like the fact he would only get 5% of everything the Earth Fiend Flame consumed. From a certain point of view, it did not make sense. There was always a loss in the energy of the things we consume, like, for example, when Cain used wave crystals. Cain could focus and try to send every single iota of energy into his rebirth heart to transform into astral wave, but it was impossible to consume 100%. There was always a loss, but it was small, around 7%. Still, that meant that Cain would get 93% of the energy from the things he consumed, something much higher than the 5% the Earth Fiend Flame would give him. However, unlike him, which could only consume certain things, the Earth Fiend Flame's description had the words energy and matter, making a wild idea appear in Cain's mind.
System, could I use the Gluttony module to devour an entire mountain?
The idea of consuming a mountain was crazy, but there was a reason why its name was Absolute Life Farm System. As long as Vessel can send it into the Devourer dimension, and its energy level is beneath the Apotheosis rank, nothing stops you from consuming an entire mountain. Cain showed a large smile as he could not contain his excitement. Regardless of their strength, all cultivators were constantly searching for resources, and he just got a tool that completely solved the problem. Cain began to fantasize about the future. There might be a time when his strength reached such a divine level that he could use the Gluttony module to consume stars and maybe even suns. Those wild dreams did not distract him for long, and after a few moments, he was able to concentrate again and immediately tested the efficacy of the Gluttony module. He took several wave artifacts from his space ring meant for wave warriors. None of them had any use for him, and most people in his place would either sell them back or give them as rewards, but now there was another path. A red force field covered all of the artifacts, and the next second they were teleported into the Devourer dimension. The Earth Fiend Flame expanded the instant they appeared, covering them with fire. Cain closed his eyes and saw how the artifacts melted, generating a stream of energy that he could use to improve his cultivation. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 252, New Lineage, I. The amount of energy he got from those wave artifacts was not much, but the speed with which the Earth Fiend Flame managed to consume all of them was shockingly fast. It made sense since the Gluttony module should be at a level according to his soul force, meaning for a wave champion. Since that was the case, it should be easy to devour bronze wave artifacts meant for wave warriors. The Earth Fiend Flame left nothing of the more than a dozen bronze wave artifacts in less than 3 minutes. Although they did not give much energy individually, all of them added up to a large amount. There were many things Cain wanted to try with the Gluttony module, but there was something he needed to do first. Now that he had unlocked the new module, it was time to evolve the old one.
System, evolve the Genetic Coder module.
As soon as Cain gave that command, he heard the robotic voice of the system in his mind. The evolution of the Genetic Coder module requires 1,000 Destiny Force. Does the vessel desire to carry on with the command? Yes.
Evolving the genetic coder module. Kane once again felt a sharp pain in his mind that was soon replaced by a feeling of heaviness. Luckily, it did not last long, and he was good as new in a few seconds. Genetic coder module has evolved, proceeding to display new tools. Genetic stimulation. Genetic suppression. Genetic enhancement. Just like with the case of the AI chip module's tools, the only difference in the name of the new ones was the lack of the word basic, but Kane knew that their power must have reached a whole new level. Kane analyzed genetic stimulation and saw he could now evolve his lightning lupus lineage to the pseudo-wave king level, the maximum theoretical purity, but what truly drew his attention was the genetic enhancement tool. The previous version generated serious drawbacks that he was unwilling to accept, and he hoped the new one would be better.
System, display the capabilities of genetic enhancement.
Displaying available genetic enhancements. Due to the genetic coder module's current capabilities, there are no adverse effects on genetic enhancement, but Vessel's current genetic map can only endure one. For a new enhancement, there needs to be an evolution of the genetic sequence. The projected outcomes are specific to the lightning lupus bloodline. Different bloodlines will generate different outcomes as the effect on the genome will vary. Enhanced genetic strength, enhanced genes focused on physical strength. Projected outcome, increase strength by 9%. Enhanced genetic speed, enhanced genes focused on physical speed. Projected outcome, increase speed by 5%. Enhanced genetic vitality, enhanced genes focused on vitality. Projected outcome, increase vitality by 10%. A wide smile appeared on Kane's face as he saw what he could do with genetic enhancement. He found it hard to believe there could be an improvement in his strength, vitality, or speed of nearly 10% without any drawbacks. The only bad news was that Kane could only endure one as a wave warrior and would need to become a wave champion to do another, since his genetic sequence would evolve during those cultivation breakthroughs. Part of Kane wanted to immediately take advantage of the tool's power and get an improvement of 10% in his vitality, but he was able to see things with a clear head. The current genetic enhancements were related to the lightning lupus lineage, so there should be even better ones if he got an even stronger bloodline. Kane's abilities had already reached the 3-star grand genetic coder level in Blade Mountain, and he felt that the evolution of the genetic coder module improved his abilities even more. That should be enough for him to fulfill a dream he had for a very long time, the creation of a new lineage for himself. As for what lineage Kane dreamed of, it was exactly the one that allowed Iris to escape from Sahara City and overwhelm an enemy that was much stronger than her less than 2 months ago. Kane had studied Morgana's notes and the information gathered by Apex from the experiment done in the Science. Thanks to the AI chip module, he already knew the genetic chain of the lineage and could now create it. There were still 3 weeks until someone would come to bring him to Blood Sea, and Kane planned to have his new lineage before that. Using the military interface, Kane brought all the material required to generate the wave virus. As he waited for the material to arrive at his residence, he closed his eyes and rested his mind. Creating this lineage would require extreme effort, so Kane needed to be in peak condition. He opened his eyes 4 hours later and saw that the materials were already in his room. Not wanting to waste any more time, Kane began to work. The first thing he needed to do was the generation of a grand vector, and it could not be any type. Kane needed to create a grand golden vector with 0% flaws for a wave virus that would engrave a bloodline in his genome. That was easier said than done, since there were some 4-star grand genetic coders who had already taken a step into the Saint genetic coder realm and had never made one. Kane cleansed his mind of all distractions before starting to work. He failed again and again, but his skills improved a little with each try. The hours went by, and after an entire day of working non-stop, he finally did it. There was nothing but exhaustion on Kane's mind, but that did not erase his smile as he saw the grand golden vector that had 0% flaws. Now came the creation of the genetic chain, and if the vector were hard, this part would be near impossible. Kane did not push through and instead chose to rest, as he needed to be at his peak if he wanted any chance of creating the lineage's genetic chain. Right before going to sleep, Kane sought to test the abilities of the gluttony module. He sent dozens of Death Wave champion beast into the Devourer dimension, where the Earth Fiend flame set all of them ablaze, generating streams of energy and vitality. the speed at which the Earth Fiend flame consumed them was fast, but not so fast as with the bronze wave artifacts. Clearly, the higher the level of the resources, the more it would take to consume. Cain spent 100 Destiny Force to improve the devouring speed by 100%, and another 100 points, so the Earth Fiend flame would drive the energy and vitality into his rebirth heart and body. That way, he could train even if he was sleeping. With everything in order, Cain went to sleep, and there was a relaxed expression on his face as he felt his astral wave and body growing stronger. Cain slept for 7 hours, a lot considering that his vitality diminished the amount of sleep his body needed. He immediately began to work on the creation of the genetic chain. The genetic chain of that lineage was so complicated that Cain had to buy another batch of materials. He worked entire days and only went to sleep once he felt the exhaustion was diminishing his abilities. That carried on for 1.5 weeks and more than a dozen new batches of materials. Cain was wealthy even by the standards of Wave champions, but he burned over half of his money for this. Nevertheless, all the effort and resources spent were worth it for Cain once he saw the perfect genetic chain. He managed to create it, and after combining it with the flawless Grand Golden Vector, he obtained a Wave virus capable of engraving a new bloodline into his genome.
I did it.
Cain could not help but shout as he saw the capsule with golden liquid before him. After taking a moment to calm his heart, he focused.
System, analyze the Grand Wave virus. Although the Grand Wave virus in his possession seemed to be at a level above the Wave champion realm, he hoped that the system would be able to analyze it. Analyzing Grand Wave virus. The analysis was taking longer than Cain expected, and just as he thought it could not be done, he heard the robotic voice in his mind. Analysis of Grand Wave virus completed. Lineage corresponds to an entity that reaches the apotheosis realm upon maturation. There is a focus on strength and a disposition to the element of shadows and the force of darkness. Expected growth in all areas upon implantation. Name of the lineage unknown. Cain showed a large smile, and the trill in his heart was hard to describe. His lineage had lagged behind lately, but now he could implant a new one whose power would enhance his power and talent. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 253, New Lineage, Cain wanted nothing more than to use the Wave virus immediately. Still, he was exhausted and understood that the generation of a new bloodline would put his body under immense stress. The Grand Wave virus would do all the work on its own, but it would demand a massive amount of vitality and energy, so it was better if he was in peak physical and mental condition for the job. Haste makes waste, and he had put too much and spent too much money into the Grand Wave virus for a mistake to happen now. Cain spent another 100 points of Destiny Force for the Earth Fiend flame to fill his body with energy and vitality before sleeping. Cain allowed his body to wake up independently after it had enough rest. He then sent 25 corpses of Wave champion Beast into the Devourer dimension before making a pile of hearts appear before him. Energy and vitality would come from the Earth Fiend flame and his revolution of the blood refinement art. According to the AI chip module, that would be enough for Cain's body to generate the new bloodline. Cain took a deep breath, allowing his mind to grow sharp in case of any problem, before taking the capsule with the Grand Wave virus and injecting it into his chest. At first, nothing happened, but 2 minutes after the golden liquid entered Cain's body, he began to tremble. A fever assaulted him so intensely that an average Wave warrior would pass out and suffer brain damage, but luckily, his high vitality prevented any sort of damage. Cain immediately began to circulate the blood refinement art and his sonic blade fusion cultivation technique, so a powerful torrent of vitality and energy would course through his body, granting it all the nutrients it could need for the creation of the new bloodline. It was a very slow and painful process. Still, Cain's eyes burned with red light as he felt the lightning lupus bloodline taking a secondary role as a new and more powerful lineage took the primary role in his body's physical constitution. Cain began to experience physical changes after the first hour, with his bones and muscle fibers growing stronger, denser, yet at the same time more flexible.
Cracks is.
That sound emerged from Kane's skeleton as his bones grew larger and thicker, increasing his height to 1.9 meters. He was just 17, and his body had yet to mature fully, so it was likely he would reach over 2 meters in the near future. There was not a part of Kane's body that was not improving, and even his energy pool was increasing, allowing him to hold more astral wave. No dream came to Kane this time, since this was not a bloodline he awakened, but one artificially generated inside his body by a grand wave virus. Finally, after 6 hours of great pain, the bloodline had fully taken over Kane's body, and the changes were over for the time being. His face was pale due to the immense stress and exhaustion, and he was sitting over a pool of his own sweat due to the high fever.
System, scan me.
It took all that was left of Kane's strength to shout that command, and he kept his eyes open as he wanted to see just how strong he had become. The absolute life form system did not make Kane wait and immediately carried on with the task. Scanning vessel. Scan of vessel completed. Name, Kane Lorifa. Race, Godslayer humankind. Path of power, astral rebirth, level 8 wave warrior. Lineage, wave talent, middle tier 7, high tier 7. Stats. Strength 10 0 12 1. Agility 7 9 8 1. Vitality 13 1 14 1. Wave 8 1 9 0. Blood energy 11 8 12 5. Marrow washing 96% completion. Note, wave virus inside vessel enhanced wave talent by 19.7%. Shock, awe, and thrill filled Kane's heart when he saw the improvement in his stats after the generation of his new lineage. His strength increased by over 20%, and there was also a considerable improvement in his vitality and energy pools. The only stat that did not obtain massive improvement was his speed, but that made sense since the lightning lupus lineage's forte was its speed. One of the most significant improvements was his wave talent, which managed to rise to the high tier 7, which meant that from now on, his cultivation speed would be several times higher. Kane noticed the lack of a name for his lineage, and as he attempted to come up with a name, he remembered that Morgana referred to the experimentation as Project Olympus. Olympus, shadows, darkness. There is no more fitting name than Avernus lineage. Established. Kane heard the absolute life form system confirm the new name of his name, and before Apex could bother him about his taste for names, he fell asleep. He woke up after a few hours. By then, all the exhaustion was gone, replaced by a feeling of immense strength that coursed through his veins. Other than strength, Kane felt an affinity to a particular element and force. He still had an affinity with lightning, but was weaker than his domain over the element of shadows and the force of darkness. Although they might sound similar, the elements of shadows and the force of darkness were different. The first one focused on silent and unpredictable movements, while the second had a corrosive and destructive nature. There were two new skills that the Avernus lineage granted to Kane, and they went by the name of Shadow Constitution and Darkness Fusion. Kane first activated Shadow Constitution, and immediately streams of shadows emerged from his body. If he pushed it to the limit, the shadows would cover every part of him. He moved from one corner of the room to the other at surprising speed and could deploy shocking gymnastic skills as if his body were made of rubber. A sharp light appeared in Kane's eyes as an idea came to his mind, and the next second he used Sonic Dash.
Boom.
A sonic boom echoed inside the room, and since this one was not more than 50 meters in diameter, Kane appeared in front of the wall in a fraction of a second. Before, he would have been forced to stop his body, but thanks to Shadow Constitution, his body was able to twist right before reaching the wall and then move in another direction. Kane smiled as he saw Sonic Dash and Shadow Constitution work flawlessly together. He stopped after a few minutes and then took a piece of Silver Wave artifact from his space ring. The first thing he did was transform his right hand into a blood gem and punch the chest plate, leaving a large indentation. Next, he took a deep breath and used Darkness Fusion, which allowed a dark aura to cover his fist. Kane punched the Silver Wave artifact again, and this time the damage was so great that it left the entire chest plate full of cracks. He was surprised by the increased destructive power that the dark aura granted to his attack was phenomenal. The darkness had a corrosive impact, affecting the particles of both organic and inorganic matter. Kane threw the chest plate up, and as it fell, he took Slaughter out and covered it with the Dark Aura before hacking. The Silver Wave artifact offered little resistance as the machete cut it in half. The abilities that his new lineage granted him were superb. Not only did his Shadow Constitution work perfectly with his Sonic Blade fusion technique, but it would also work perfectly alongside his assassination tactics. As for Dark Fusion, it was very powerful but consumed a lot of astral wave, so he would only use it in life and death battles. Ultimately, the new lineage increased his overall strength and granted incredibly powerful techniques, but there was still room for improvement.
System, display the genetic enhancement tool.
Displaying available genetic enhancements. Due to the genetic coda module's current capabilities, there are no adverse effects on genetic enhancement, but Vessel's current genetic map can only endure one. For a new enhancement, there needs to be an evolution of the genetic sequence. The projected outcomes are specific to the Avernus bloodline. Different bloodlines will generate different outcomes as the effect on the genome will vary. Enhanced genetic strength. Enhance genes focused on physical strength. Projected outcome, increase strength by 20%. Enhanced genetic speed, enhance genes focused on physical speed. Projected outcome, increase speed by 9%. Enhanced genetic vitality, enhance genes focused on vitality. Projected outcome, increase vitality by 15%. Cain showed no hesitation in his choice. There was no point in being average in everything, and pushing your forte to the limit was always better.
System, activate enhanced genetic strength.
Cost of enhanced genetic strength is 1,000 Destiny Foss. Vessel wished to continue. Cain was a little surprised by the number since it was much higher than the 100 points the previous version demanded, but he carried on.
Yes.
As soon as Cain uttered that word, he felt how a Foss began to act over his genes, and then his muscles and bones grew stronger. It did not take long, and once all of it was over, a sense of immense strength coursed through Cain's body. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 254, Bloodless One. Vessel's strength, 14.5. Cain clenched his fist as he saw that number since it was simply overwhelming strength for a wave warrior. It was a strength that matched that of some wave champion that evolved after Flawless Marrow. With his current strength, Cain was sure he could take late wave champion head-on without the need to use assassination skills. I have grown much more powerful over these last few weeks. Now that I have Gluttony module, and the improvement of my body done by Sun Seed and then Avernus lineage, I am much more confident in handling anything that could happen in Blood Sea. It is time to look at Silver Wave artifacts. Cain's current energy pool was high enough for him to drive wave artifacts meant for wave champions, so he used the military interface to lose for one. It did not take long before a black set of armor caught his attention.
Berserker armor.
That was the name of the armor set that caught Cain's attention and consisted of a chest plate, gauntlets, and boots. It did not have special abilities, and it only focused on protection. Cain had no problem with the artifacts not providing skills since he no longer had any need for them since his repertoire of spells and techniques covered all of his necessities. The entire set was worth 300 military credits, expensive even for wave champions, but Cain did not hesitate to buy it as it would be of great help and would not need new armor until his astral wave could drive gold wave artifacts. After all his training and experiments, there was only 1 week left for his journey to the Blood Sea, and Cain was trying to figure out the best way to use that time. Standard cultivation would not do much, but then an idea came to his mind. There was something in his space ring that had a massive amount of vitality and energy and could devour with the help of his Gluttony module. Cain waved his hand, and the corpse of Alexander Martel appeared in front of him. He had devoured all the blood in the body, but there was still a lot of energy left in his skeleton, tissues, and sacred organ that he could drain through the use of the Earth Fiend Flame. The ethical and moral dilemma of using the bodies of his own kind as a source of nutrients was something Cain overcame a long time ago. He would never do it with a friend, but had no reservations about devouring an old bastard that attempted to kill him. Cain covered the body of Alexander Martel with his ego wave, and once the red force field completely encompassed this one, he was able to send it into the Devourer dimension. Once Alexander Martel's corpse reached the Devourer dimension, the Earth Fiend flame immediately set it ablaze. Still, unlike wave artifacts and the corpses of Wave Champion Beast, it did not immediately start generating streams of energy and vitality. Cain was not surprised, as he still remembers how hard it was for him to pierce Alexander Martel's chest to extract his blood. Despite being an essence wave cultivator, the middle-aged man's body was harder than most silver wave artifacts. Although essence wave cultivators cannot compare with astral wave cultivators at the same rank regarding body refinement, thinking they had a weak physique would be naive. Those with powerful lineages and trained powerful auxiliary techniques could deploy impressive physical strength. At this rate, it will take 2 months for the Earth Fiend flame to consume this Wave King's corpse completely. 2 months was too much for Cain since he only had 7 days left, so he had no other choice but to spend 5,000 Destiny Force to improve the speed at which the Earth Fiend flame consumed the corpse by 500% for the next 5 days. As soon as Cain did that, his eyes widened due to the sudden burst of vitality and energy that flooded his body. It was extremely dense and immensely pure, and could almost effortlessly transfer into his flesh, blood, and energy pool. The quality of the energy and vitality Cain could attain from a Wave King's corpse was easily 10 times better than the ones from Wave Champion Beast's corpses. Cain's eyes burst with red light as he pushed his mind to its peak and made sure to suppress all exhaustion so that he could train for the next 7 days without stopping. He used his astral wave as a mantle beneath his skin, ensuring no energy or vitality could escape his body as he activated the blood refinement art and sonic blade fusion cultivation technique. The vitality soon fused into his flesh and blood, making his body stronger and more resilient, improving his stamina and vitality. As for the energy, it made its way into the rebirth heart, where it was transformed into more astral wave that helped the growth of the meridians, making this one move deeper into the brain. Cain could feel how the meridians expanded through the corpus callosum and the thalamus, immediately enhancing his cognitive abilities. Still, the most significant improvements were in his spatial awareness, along with the ability to receive sensory information and react to it. After the 3rd day, Cain managed to jump from the middle stage of level 8 into the late stage, initiating the improvement of his hypothalamus. That impressive cultivation speed was partly thanks to the incredibly pure energy and vitality Cain got from Alexander, but was also the result of his new wave talent. The cultivation speed of someone with a high tier 7 was almost 3 times faster than someone with a low tier 7. Cain began to feel exhausted after the 4th day of cultivation, but he did not need to rest since a unique weapon in his arsenal could handle that. Sun Seed. Cain only had to think of his alter ego, and this one acted on its own, flooding the inside of his veins with golden flames that washed away all the body and mental fatigue. A smile appeared on his face since Sunseed was able to recover from all the exhaustion and could keep cultivating. Of course, using Sunseed's power only delayed that need for sleep and did not erase it. Cain did not lose focus and carried on with his cultivation, driving his meridians deeper into his brain. They were now improving his hypothalamus, and he immediately felt the changes in his body. There was a massive improvement in his hemostases and the regulation of his various bodily functions, along with enhanced control over his hunger, thirst, sleep, sexual behavior, and emotions. Finally, the end of the 5th day arrived, and the energy and vitality that emerged from the Devourer dimension into Cain's body diminished considerably. The 500% increase in the power of the Earth Fiend flame was over, and Cain would not spend more Destiny Force in it since there was very little left, and he wanted to save it for an emergency. The Earth Fiend flame continued consuming Alexander's corpse, and with its current speed, it would do it for the next 1.5 weeks, when nothing would be left. Cain could feel that his meridians had already wrapped around 90% of his brain, and he was close to evolving into level 9. I doubt that the ascendance of the Blood Moon will immediately start after I appear, so there is still time. I must be at the peak of level 9 by then to use the lucky chance in that event if I want to achieve Void Marrow. Being so tired that he could barely open his eyes by the time the envoy of Blood Sea arrived, It would not be good, so Kane went asleep. Kane woke up the next day and spent this time creating new wave viruses that could help him improve his wave talent and survival skill. On the seventh day, as he was still working, he heard a knock on his door before this one opened on its own. Two people crossed the door, and one of them was someone Kane already knew.
Good day, Major Lorifer. I see you really do work non-stop.
Luther smiled at Kane as he guided a 3-meter-tall bald man with white skin covered with black armor into the room. Kane nodded to Luther, but his eyes could not leave the pale giant next to this one. It was not the man's imposing body that disturbed him, but the feeling of immense danger this one generated in him. He felt no different than a mortal in front of a raging bear, knowing there was no way to survive if this one decided to attack. Luther saw the severity in Kane's eyes and nodded, since that was the perfect response in front of the man by his side. Even he had a hard time keeping calm.
The gentleman by my side is Bloodless One. He will bring you to Blood Sea.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 255, To Blood Sea. Kane stared at the man named Bloodless One for a moment before clasping his hand and performing a small bow. He did not know anything about the man, but it was clear this one was a powerhouse and strength deserved respect in the Godslayer humankind empire. Bloodless nodded toward Kane, and he began to look at the young man in detail. He noticed an impressive physical constitution, and a sharp light appeared in his eyes when he noticed the soul force of this one. Just like the collapsing lightning duke, Bloodless One was surprised to see that someone so young as Kane had evolved his soul force to the realm of Wave Champion at level 8.
So you are the one His Highness sent me to bring to Blood Sea. Your current abilities are remarkable for someone so young. Let's go.
Bloodless One said nothing else before turning around and walking out of the residence. Kane was a little surprised by the overbearing attitude of the man, but he was not bothered too much since all powerhouses had extravagant personalities. He had already packed all his belongings in his space ring, so there was no need to delay things. As for Luther, he just smiled and did not really care about Bloodless One's attitude. He just followed Bloodless One and Kane, and then the three got in a military vehicle. The military vehicle moved at an impressive speed, nearly supersonic, but that was too slow for someone like Bloodless One. He could have easily risen into the sky and reached the exit of the Imperial Lightning Fort in a few seconds. However, no matter how overbearing Bloodless One was, he was not crazy enough to ignore the rules of the collapsing lightning duke. Soldiers saw the vehicle moving across the fort streets at supersonic speed, and some could recognize Kane inside it. Seeing the greatest geniuses of the Imperial Lightning fought in a vehicle alongside someone so striking as Bloodless One generated wild ideas in those young soldiers, which would surely evolve into even wilder gossip. Kane couldn't care less about the rumors that could spread about him, since only those with too much free time on their hands would pay any attention. His mind was not on the bald, pale giant before him. The only thing Kane perceived from Bloodless One was an immeasurable physical strength and nothing more. There was no aura or density of astral wave that could suggest a certain cultivation level. For all Kane knew, this man was a titan.
How long will it take us to reach Blood Sea?
Kane did not feel the need to remain quiet the entire journey, so he asked a question that had been bugging him for the past few days. He had a map of the entire collapsing lightning sector in his AI chip module, but special locations like Blood Sea were not in it. Even with the military clearance of a major, he had no access to that information. Of course, he attempted to use the hacking tool to learn about it, but he only got a broad estimate. Bloodless One had closed his eyes once he got into the vehicle and did not open them even after hearing Kane speak. But he did answer.
How long we take to reach the Blood Sea will depend on you.
That was not a very useful answer, but there was nothing Kane could do about it other than nod. The rest of the trip was silent, with neither of the three speaking to the other until they finally reached a massive gate that led to the outside. Just as Bloodless One and Kane exited the military vehicle, Luther spoke toward the lost.
Major Lorifer, before you go, I must convey a message from the collapsing lightning duke.
Kane stared at Luther for a moment. There was no reason for a military order from the highest commander of the Imperial Lightning Fort not to be delivered directly through the AI chip, unless you want other people to hear it. Bloodless One also understood the meaning behind Luther's actions, and there was no expression on his face, but he did focus on the bald man.
The collapsing Lightning Duke orders you to return to the Imperial Lightning Fort within a year. If you do not comply, the first pillar will go after you. I advise you to come back, since the leader of the collapsing lightning pillars is a madman who makes havoc wherever he goes.
Luther spoke to Cain, but he glanced at Bloodless One when he mentioned the first pillar, and there was a clear intent in his eyes. The Imperial Lightning Fort will respect the right of the Blood Duke to summon Cain toward Blood Sea, but they should know that if their scheme resulted in the young man's death, there would be consequences. Bloodless One's eyes narrowed when he heard the name First Pillar. If there were two people he would really not want to fight, those would be the collapsing Lightning Duke and the First Pillar. He did not say a word and just walked toward the fort's exit.
I will make sure to remember the words of the collapsing Lightning Duke.
Cain clasped his hand and performed a small bow toward Luther before going after Bloodless One. Luther saw the duo leave and commanded the vehicle to take him back into the Titan Tower. There was nothing he could do other than wish Cain good luck and hope to see the young man again in the future. Cain exited the fort and searched for Bloodless One's ship, but there was nothing, and before he could even ask what kind of vehicle they would take, the man pointed to the northwest.
Blood Sea is 44.21 kilometers in that direction.
Bloodless One calmly began to walk in that direction. Cain stared at Bloodless One, and then a light of realization appeared in his eyes as he understood what was happening.
We are going to walk all the way.
The distance that Bloodless One just described was larger than the circumference of the old world, so walking all the way was crazy.
Not walk, run.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 256, Blood Runes and Blood Caw.
Not walk, run.
Bloodless One said nothing else before flashing forward, immediately reaching a speed of over 200 meters per second. Crazy bastard. Cain shouted in his mind, but there was nothing he could do other than start running. 200 meters was fast, but he was able to keep that speed without too much problem. Unfortunately for Cain, Bloodless One's speed just kept increasing, and it was not long before a sonic boom appeared.
Boom.
Bloodless One broke the sound barrier, and his body began to move at supersonic speed. Cain was fast and strong, but moving at supersonic speed was impossible by only relying on his physical prowess, so he had to rely on sonic dash. Bloodless One stopped improving his speed after breaking the barrier of sound, which was good for Cain since he was running at full speed. If you were to look at the duo from the sky, you would see two figures moving at supersonic speed in a straight light to the northwest. As for all the trees, rocks, and wave beast, too slow to get out of their way, they were shattering to pieces. Bloodless One was like a train, breaking everything in his path without losing momentum at all. None of the branches, dust, and blood that might result from those clashes touched Bloodless One's body. It was like a force field around him, keeping him immaculate. Cain was right behind Bloodless One, and there was a sense of awe when he saw how this one shattered everything in front and never used even an iota of astral wave. There was no way to describe Bloodless One's strength other than overwhelming, and the difference between him and Cain was so much that the lost one could not even measure it. 2 hours of running at full speed, relying constantly on sonic dash and a bursting wave cloak, made Cain feel that the muscles on his legs were shattering. He was exhausted and could not continue for much longer unless he rested, or that would have been the case had he not awakened his visualization technique. Sun Seed. As soon as that thought crossed Cain's mind, the alter ego inside his soul dimension began to glow, and the next second golden flames coursed through his body. The power of the alter ego washed away the fatigue and healed the muscles while recovering stamina, helping Cain keep running at supersonic speed. Bloodless One noticed how Cain seemed to recover from the exhaustion and could keep running without a problem. He was not impressed by the young man's supersonic speed, but the fact that one could keep it for several hours was remarkable. The duo continued running at supersonic speed for over 4.5 hours until finally, Bloodless One decided to stop after reaching the foot of a small mountain. He could carry on non-stop until reaching Blood Sea, but the same could not be said from the young man following him. Kane's breathing was rough, and he almost fell to the ground once they stopped. Sunseed's energy was not endless, and it used his ego wave as an energy pool. Even if he had the willpower of a wave king, there was a limit to the power of his alter ego. Although Kane had the urge to throw himself into the ground and rest there, he used what little strength he had left to adopt a meditative position. He knew nothing about Bloodless One and would not show any sign of weakness in front of this one. It took a few minutes, but Kane was able to regulate his breathing. The damage to the muscles on his legs would need a few hours to heal, but his mind was in perfect condition, so he would use the time to cultivate. However, before Kane could start, Bloodless One threw him a red orb the size of an apple and a starry gem. Kane caught them and immediately understood what they were. One was a source of immense vitality, and the other could not be anything but a saint technique. Each of them would greatly help Kane, but this one did not use any and stared at Bloodless One. There was no such thing as a free meal in this world, especially from someone you had never met before, so Kane wanted to know the price of the saint technique and the blood orb. Bloodless One saw Kane's stoic heart and nodded. The core emotion that drove humans was greed, and while it allowed us to make great things, it could also lead people to their doom. True cultivators must know how to use it for their benefit and not succumb to it.
Good, I like your emotion control. The stronger you are, the more useful you will be for the Blood Duke. The blood orb can be considered a gift. As for the saint technique, use it freely, but you must return it to me once you leave Blood Sea.
Kane nodded after hearing that. Whatever machination the Blood Duke had for him required him to become stronger. That meant he was not a disposable pawn, at least not for the moment. The first thing that Kane did was send his ego wave into the starry gem to see what type of saint technique was inside it. A name immediately reached his mind and was one he was very familiar with.
Blood refinement art.
A smile appeared on Kane's face since this was just what he needed. He needed a body refinement technique to help him unlock his body's full potential during the Wave Champion rank and into Wave King. Kane had already reached the peak of the second level of the blood refinement art, and the information he got from the Skull's AI chip provided a description from the third and fourth levels, but the starry gem had the whole technique.
Blood runes and blood core.
Those were the names of the third and fourth levels of the blood refinement technique. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 257, Bloodflow Fury. Just like when Kane sent his ego wave into the starry gem that held Blood Hand, an illusion appeared in his mind, and he saw a man standing on top of an ocean full of blood. What surprised Kane was the fact that the man was Bloodless One. It seemed that the powerhouse was the one that engraved the technique into the starry gem. For a moment, Kane wondered if he engraved his understanding of a saint technique in the future, whether people would see a picture of him going over the technique. Those thoughts did not last for long as soon his focus returned to Bloodless One as this one went over the blood refinement art. Bloodless One started from the beginning, devouring the blood beneath his feet and using it to nurture his flesh. Then came the formation of blood energy. Those were the first and second levels of the blood refinement art, something Kane knew very well, but the next part was completely new for him. Once the blood energy in the body reached its peak and you could not hold any more of it inside, it was time to create blood runes. A blood rune was the crystallization of blood energy, each very small but capable of holding massive amounts of energy. Creating a single rune meant the evolution to the third level of the blood refinement art. The process of creating each blood rune was extremely complicated, but Kane could gain a basic understanding and tap into the experiences that Bloodless One engraved in the starry gem. As you advance to the third level, the amount of blood runes inside your body will increase. The final number was determined by your constitution, with those with a strong physique able to hold much more than others. In the end, the number of blood runes inside your body will reach its apex, and at that point will come the fourth level, the creation of the blood core. If generating a blood rune was complicated, the birth of a blood Ka was nearly impossible to decipher. Kane's cognitive abilities were superb thanks to his soul foss and ego wave, but even he had difficulty figuring out how to evolve from the third level to the fourth. Seeing the wonders that the body could achieve was beyond amazing for Kane. The essence evolution path of power deciphered the mysteries of the world and nature, tapping into the power of the laws. Yet, the way the astral rebirth path of power analyzed and modified the body was not any less wonderful and intricate. Kane's eyes regained focus shortly after the illusion showed every part of the third and fourth levels of the blood refinement art in detail. He stared at Bloodless One before bowing, expressing his appreciation. After that, Kane did not lose time and used the blood orb to increase the amount of blood energy inside his body. His constitution had already reached the wave champion level a long time ago, allowing him to attain the peak of the second level of the blood refinement art. It was still a little too soon to evolve into the third level since Kane's body could still hold more blood energy, but he could practice the creation of blood runes. That way, as soon as his current capacity for blood energy reached its limit, he could instantly advance to the third level. Bloodless One focused on Kane, and his eyes grew sharp. He wanted to see with his own eyes the body domain of the young man, and he was immediately satisfied when he saw the superb blood control of this one. Kane was able to divide his mind into two tasks. One was improving his cultivation, and the other was his mastery over the blood refinement art. After 4 hours, Kane halted his cultivation as he saw Bloodless One turning to the northwest, and he understood that they needed to continue their journey. The duo returned to continue their run, moving at supersonic speed. Bloodless One was in the lead, shattering everything in his path, while Kane followed him silently. 4.5 hours of running later, Bloodless One stopped since the young man behind him could no longer carry on. Kane's breathing was rough, but he kept a composed expression on his face as he adopted a meditative stance on the ground and renewed his cultivation. After another 4 hours, Kane stood up since he noticed that Bloodless One was doing the same, but to his surprise, instead of immediately flashing forward, this one adopted a battle stance. Bloodless One raised his arms, protecting his face, while tucking his elbows in and putting one foot in front of the other while slightly bending the knee. Kane recognized that stance as one prevalent among the fighters of the old world's Muay Thai, a martial art known for its brutality as it focused on breaking bones and doing lethal damage to the opponent.
This is the battle style most of the Bloodless Force practice and goes by the name of Bloodflow Fury. As you can deduce, it draws inspiration from Muay Thai, but the true key behind its power is a profound understanding of the body's blood flow. Through manipulating blood circulation, we can enhance our skills to an impressive level and unleash devastating strikes. During ventricular ejection, meaning the moment your heart ejects the blood inside it to the rest of your body, you extend your extremity to carry on with the attack. And during ventricular filling, the moment your heart fills with blood, you retract your extremity and prepare for a new attack. This style allows you not only to express an immense power with each attack, but also to save your energy, diminishing the speed at which your stamina depletes.
Bloodless One spoke with a profound voice, and there was a sharp light in his eyes, making it clear how important this technique was and how much effort he put into perfecting it. Kane noticed the importance of the lesson, and he made sure to erase everything else from his mind other than Bloodless One.
There are two fundamental components of Bloodflow Fury, and the first one is blood activation. Its essence is the stimulation of blood circulation, increasing your heart rate and improving your strength and speed. However, you must go even further to unlock the full power of the technique. You must control your blood flow to the point your ventricular ejection and ventricular filling are no longer automatic processes and are under your command. From what I have learned from my brother's reports, you already have a skill that allows you to increase your blood flow. And since you are at body over mind, the only thing you need to control your ventricular filling and ejection is practice.
Bloodless One stopped speaking, and his eyes grew sharp as he began to unleash a barrage of attacks that combined punches, kicks, along with elbow and knee strikes. Kane's pupils dilated as he focused on Bloodless One. Every attack was followed by another with even greater strength, leaving no openings. Bloodless One heart rate increased along with the speed of his and strength of his strikes. The attacks were growing so profound and fast that Kane could only see a blur and was not able to decipher the power behind them. The way Bloodless One deployed those kicks and punches was amazing, and so complex that not even supercomputers of the old world could analyze them. After demonstrating just how complex Blood Flow Fury could become, Bloodless One slowed the speed of his attacks until they stopped.
The second fundamental component of Blood Flow Fury is vital pressure point. It refers to our ability to land precise strikes to the vital pressure point along with the body's meridians, exploiting the interconnectedness of blood flow and energy pathways. By targeting these points, we disrupt our enemy's blood flow, temporarily weakening them or inducing temporary paralysis. It allows for efficient and precise strikes that maximize the effectiveness of our attacks. There are 4 basic strikes on Blood Flow Fury: Flowing Fist, Crimson Knee and Elbows, Tempest Kick, and Vessel Strike.
Bloodless One extended his arm forward and relaxed his shoulders before unleashing punches that moved like lighting and shadows, fast and unpredictable, in patterns that left no opening and could break any defense.
Flowing First, you must channel your blood flow into your fists, enhancing the impact and speed of their punches.
After that, Bloodless One retracted his arms and moved his right leg forward and his left leg back. Right after adopting that position, he unleashed a barrage of kicks with overwhelming strength that could extend way further than the fists.
Tempest Kick, you channel your blood flow into their legs to deliver powerful kicks capable of devastating impact. They have a lesser speed than Flowing Fist but greater strength and range.
Keynes made sure to engrave every moment and word that came from Bloodless One, since what he was learning was superb. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 258, Blood Rebirth. After Tempest Kick, Blueless One took a deep breath, and his heartbeat grew even more potent as a red glow emerged from his elbows and knees. He then began to unleash strikes with them that carried so much strength that giant gales formed due to their momentum.
Crimin's Knees and Elbows. By channeling my blood flow across my knees and elbows, you can deliver bone-crushing blows that can incapacitate opponents and are especially good at breaking defenses and armor.
Kane instinctively nodded as he doubted a bone, armor, or shield could endure those strikes.
Finally comes Vessel Strike. It is the essence of the technique and the hardest to master. I form a fist with my hand before making the middle and index fingers protrude.
Bloodless One adopted that hand position and began to strike with a strength and precision that defying logic. Instead of a hammer like Flowing Fist and Tempest Kick, Vessel Strike was a nail aimed at a small point and doing horrible damage.
Vessel strikes allow me to obstruct or redirect blood circulation of an enemy momentarily, weakening his defenses and temporarily diminishing their strength, providing an opening for further attacks.
After finishing that last barrage of strikes, Bloodless One lowered his arms and broke his fighting stance before turning at Kane.
Show me what you have learned.
Kane's eyes were sharp as he nodded at Bloodless One and closed his eyes. He was going through every move the man did, trying to remember their essence and how to replicate them. Bloodless One did not get upset because Kane made him wait. On the contrary, that was precisely the behavior he expected from someone like the young soldier. Instead of rushing things, taking a moment and preparing yourself was better. Kane kept his eyes closed for an entire hour, but when he finally opened them, there was a bursting red light as he adopted the Blood Flow Fury's battle stance. His heartbeat increased as he activated first gear, driving his blood flow fast enough to carry on with the most basic form of the technique. Bloodless One saw Kane's skin turn red just before this one unleashed a barrage of strikes that combined the Flowing Fist and Tempest Kick. He nodded and expected Kane only to unleash that level, since the other 2 techniques required a much stronger blood flow, and he did not expect the young man to have that type of technique.
Thumpy.
Bloodless One was wrong and saw with shock how Kane's body turned even redder, his veins bulging and his heartbeat hammering with so much strength that it resembled a bell. Kane activated second gear, along with the power of the Sun Seed, balancing the destructive powers of the first with the regeneration of the second. That increase in his blow flow and agility allowed him to unleash Crimson Elbows and Knees and Vessel Strike. A small smile appeared on Bloodless One as he saw Kane's skill and talent. There was nothing better for someone that wanted to teach than a gifted and hard-working student.
Raise your shoulders, lower your center of gravity, straighten your back.
Bloodless One began to guide Kane, correcting the mistakes and slowly improving the young man's technique. There were times simple words would not be enough, and he would demonstrate before asking Kane to do it again. The complexity of Blood Flow Fury was so high that calling it a saint technique would not be wrong since it was impossible to learn it by relying on mere words. After 2 hours, Bloodless One raised his hand, indicating that the training was over and telling Kane to rest. Half an hour later, the duo flashed to the northwest at supersonic speed. For the next couple of days, Kane only did 3 things. He ran at supersonic speed for several hours before improving his cultivation and mastery over blood refinement art, and finally, he honed his skill over Blood Flow Fury. After 5 days, Bloodless One and Kane managed to reach the peak of a mountain, and what they saw generated a profound sense of awe and wonder in the young man's heart. Kane's eyes widened as he saw in the distance a giant body of water resembling an ocean, full of blood, extending to the horizon. He could still feel the overwhelming vitality in those blood waters despite how far it was. Facing that magnificent sea was a large island, and built on it, there was a massive city. Unlike most designs in the Empire, which had a futuristic aura, the building in that city resembled those of an ancient culture of the Old World. Right in the center of that island, there was a majestic pagoda whose might did not fall behind that of the Imperial Lightning Fort's Titan Tower. As soon as Kane put his eyes on that pagoda, he felt 2 sets of eyes focusing on him. One was familiar, and he deduced they belonged to the Blood Duke, but the other was new. The second set of eyes were dark and had a viciousness in them, which only grew once they focused on Kane. Kane's eyes burst with red light as his ego wave instinctively burst with power, protecting his mind from the dark intent emanating from the pagoda. The dark eyes, full of viciousness, did not focus too long on Kane and soon vanished along with the ones from the Blood Duke. A severe expression appeared on Kane's face since it became clear to him that the enemy of the Blood Duke was inside that pagoda.
According to my knowledge, you have a saint cultivation technique and should be aware of blood rebirth.
Kane was taken aback by the words of Bloodless One and stared at the man for a moment before nodding.
Yes, it is described in my sonic blade fusion technique. It is the key to building my foundation through the wave champion rank, which is similar to marrow washing for wave warriors. It is the process in which the blood inside my body evolves beyond the realm of mortality, granting me incredible speed, strength, and vitality, along with a supernatural resistance to toxins and diseases. Blood rebirth has 4 stages: red blood stage, blue blood stage, golden blood stage, and mercury blood stage. Each stage is countless times harder to achieve than the previous one, and upon reaching the golden blood stage, my vitality and energy would be high enough to evolve into a wave king.
Kane did not hide anything, since there was no way a powerhouse like Bloodless One would have less cultivation knowledge than him. Bloodless One stared at the city, surrounded by that sea of blood, as he talked to Kane.
You are correct. There are 4 stages, and you can evolve beyond peak wave champion upon attaining golden blood stage. However, although you could become a wave king at that point, it would be nearly impossible to advance beyond the early level, and that would most likely be the end of your road.
Kane nodded since that was a piece of information that the sonic blade fusion had already shared with him, but he did not lose focus.
That is what theory says, but there is no such thing as absolutes in cultivation. Take me, for example. I evolved to wave champion with borderline flawless marrow, so I should not have been able to achieve mercury blood. Yet, through great effort and the help of my seniors, I managed to fix that flaw and do what the theory says could not happen.
Bloodless One raised a finger to his mouth and bit it, making a small wound, before allowing a drop of golden blood with a silver glow to fall to the ground.
Boom!
Shock appeared in Kane's eyes when he saw how a single drop of blood fell to the ground with the might of a cannonball. It was so dense that despite measuring less than a centimeter in range, its weight had to surpass 10 kilograms. Kane stared at Bloodless One with pure awe as he wondered what kind of strength the man's circulatory system had.
As you can see, there is no flaw that cannot be mended with enough effort and hard work, but the same goes the other way around. You must never grow complacent about your current achievements, no matter how high they are, since that is the key to failure.
It would be easy for a genius like Cain to fail to understand the meaning of those words, since it already became routine for him to stand up above the rest of the people his age. But the solemn light in his eyes made it clear he paid attention. Bloodless One nodded as he saw that Cain did not let his current achievement cloud his judgment.
Very good, the Blood Duke is waiting for you in the Blood Pagoda. Do not make him wait.
Those were the last words that Bloodless One said before vanishing. Cain was a little surprised to see Bloodless One disappeared just like that, but immediately regained his focus as he stared at the Blood Pagoda again. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 259, To the Blood Pagoda, I. One way to reach the island would be by swimming, but Cain was not dumb enough to jump into a sea full of blood. There was no way to know what kind of wave beasts were there or if the blood itself was toxic. Luckily, a large city was built on the shore. Unlike most cities built in the Godslayer Humankind Empire, there were no walls around it. That would be deadly in most cases due to wave beasts hiding in the forest, but the place was completely barren of such vegetal life. Humans focused on keeping a stable balance with the ecosystem, but did not go out of their way to create forests or the like. Usually, no large settlement would form in such barren terrain, but it was clear to Cain that the sea of blood proportionated all the energy and vitality that people and cultivators could need. There were other problems, since mortals could not survive without the proteins and vitamins given by vegetables, but those were easily fixed by either pharmacologic technology or commerce. Cain did not bother too much with how such a city could thrive and instead focused on the bridge connecting to the island, which he could use to reach the Blood Pagoda. Things would probably not go so smoothly, but there was no point in delaying things. He descended the mountain and used Sonic Dash until reaching close enough to the city. People were going on with their lives, but just as he was about to get near them to learn a little more about their lives, he noticed a strange expression on their faces. Most people saw Cain with a mixture of curiosity and caution. There was nothing wrong with that, especially if this was a place that did not receive many outsiders. Yet, there was a small percentage of the population whose gazes made Cain frown. He could feel their hostility and disdain, which made no sense since he had never seen those people. What was even weirder was that some of them were much lower than Cain in terms of power and status. Still, they dared to look down at him with contempt and did not even bother to hide their emotions. People looking at him as if they were superior was something Cain was used to since he had seen it many times in science, but the gazes of disdain came from commoners. All that brought great confusion to Cain, as their behavior was irrational, but he soon got an answer.
Racial prejudice.
Cain heard Apex's voice in his mind and could not help but frown as he remembered an ideology of the old world. Racism. It was true that the Godslayer Humankind Empire indoctrinated people on the idea that humans were superior to Wave Beast and the Dark races, which is why they were allowed to kill them without remorse. The idea that some humans were better than others just for the colors of their skin was no longer present. There was also the fact that the people living in this place did not share any common racial characteristics.
It is not as vain as the color of their skin or the form of their eyes. From what I can see, they formed some sort of racial identity based on their bloodlines.
Cain's eyes narrowed. He used his invisible ego wave to analyze the people in the city and detected the same bloodline in every man, woman, and child. There were some minor variations and differences in purity, but the essence of the bloodline in each of them was the same. It was not weird for noble families to have the same bloodline, but it was highly unusual for that to happen in a city with a population in the millions. The idea they were all related was ridiculous, so the most likely answer would be that something in this place generated that bloodline in the people. Although all of it was fascinating, that was not why Cain came to Blood Sea, and there was no reason to get into problems, so he avoided everybody and simply made his way to the bridge. Of course, the fact that Cain did not want trouble did not mean people would not make them for him. Some began to walk in his direction, and their expressions made it clear what they wanted. However, before they could even get near him, Cain would look at them with red eyes. None of those people could endure the pressure of a wave king's willpower and immediately back down.
HMPH.
Cain sneered, and they were lucky that was all he did. Looking down on others just due to the way they were born was beyond stupid for him, especially if that person surpassed him in every conceivable measure. Not wanting to waste time, Cain hurried up to the bridge, and as he reached the Shah, he saw hundreds of youngsters and people in their early 20s line up. All of them wore red robes with the words "Outer Disciples" on their backs, a common terminology in some martial sects. Seeing that attire made Cain understand a little more about Blood Sea, but what really drew his attention was how all those disciples were in a meditative position in front of the Shah and seemed to be drawing the blood into their bodies. Even more interesting was that the disciples were all exactly 10 meters away from each other. That was clearly with the intent not to disturb each other during their training, but Cain could not help but feel they were making a defensive formation. They used the blood that reaches the Shah to cultivate while, at the same time, forming a barrier that protects the city from any form of aquatic life that might try to attack. What a practical mechanism. Cain could not help but feel admiration for the person who came up with such a practical method to cultivate their disciples and simultaneously protect the people. Just as Cain focused on the disciples, many opened their eyes and turned toward him. He immediately felt the hostile gazes in around half of the disciples, a much more significant proportion than the one in the city. That told Cain that the ideology of racial superiority based on their bloodlines came from the island and was stronger in the disciples than in commoners. That was not good news for him, since it meant he would find himself in a place where half of the population would hate him just because of the blood running through his veins. If there was one thing that Cain was not in the mood to handle, was bigotry and ignorance, so he just ignored the gazes of the disciples and continued to the bridge. However, before he could get a foot in it, 2 disciples got in his way.
We are the Blood Bridges Guard, and we do not allow people like you to enter Blood Island.
Cain stared at the duo, whose appearance could not be more typical. Both had large bodies with bulging muscles, but were just level 9 wave warriors, and neither had a particularly good foundation. There were many ways in which Cain could handle them, with the most straightforward being crushing both of them using brute strength, but there was a reason why Bloodless One left him on the mountain and made him walk to the Blood Pagoda alone. Cain needed to prove how he could handle a situation where the answer was not brute strength. It was true he could crush the duo in a second, but that would only give the people he hated an excuse to throw him in jail, or maybe even worse. A more subtle way would be to use hypnosis, and he was sure no one of the people present would even notice it, but there were extremely powerful individuals watching every move he made. Using the name of Bloodless One or the Blood Duke would also not work, since even if they believed him, that meant he needed to rely on them for something so simple as reaching the Blood Pagoda, proving that he lacked in terms of wisdom. Luckily, there was another path Cain could take, which relied on no one else but his own status. He waved his hand, taking a small card from his space ring and showing it to the duo. As soon as the 2 disciples guarding the bridge saw it, the expression on their faces changed, and they were not alone, since the rest on the Shah were also surprised when they read the words on the crystal card. Imperial Lightning Fought Division, Major Cain Lorifa. Even if they were racist garbage, there was no way a few mere wave warriors would dare to look down on the Imperial Army.
I am a major of the Imperial Army. I came from the Imperial Lighting Fort to speak with someone in the Blood Pagoda. Anyone in my path will consider an interrupting military affair, and I have the right to report their crimes to the capital.
Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates. Episode number 260, To the Blood Pagoda, Air. The 2 gods looked at each other when they saw Cain's military identification. Their behavior was typical of bullies, valiant against those they believed themselves superior, but afraid of the ones with strength. Never would they dare to disrespect the Imperial Army, the strongest force in the entire empire under the command of the current emperor of humankind. Resentment and rage appeared on the Duke's faces, but in the end, they only sneered before moving away from Cain's path.
We would never dare to obstruct a major from the Imperial Lightning Fort during a mission. But I must warn you that the bridge is in repairs, and there could be problems with the force field keeping wave beasts away.
Cain stared at the god that spoke those words before focusing on the bridge. It was over 5,000 meters long, with large pillars every 100 meters generating a sky-blue veil that covered the road. Since it was a straight path, with nothing obstructing his view, Cain could see all the way to the other end of the bridge. There were no problems with the pillars or the sky-blue veils, but he noticed someone stopping people on the other edge of the bridge. There could be actual problems with the bridge, but the most likely answer was that someone with enough power sent orders to these disciples, ensuring they generated trouble for Cain. It was likely that the sky-blue veil protecting the bridge would shut down once he was in the middle of it, leaving him exposed to the attack of the wave beasts living inside the Sea of Blood. Cain only shook his head at such a foolish trap and simply walked forward. The two gods smiled as they saw Cain walking to the bridge, and were ready to send the signal when this one was in the middle of the road.
Boom!
However, those smiles froze when they heard a sonic boom and saw Cain vanish, only for this one to appear more than 300 meters into the road in less than a second. A bridge over 5,000 meters was long, but someone moving at supersonic speed could cover it in less than 20 seconds. One of the gods was able to overcome the shock and immediately used his AI chip to communicate with someone.
He is moving at supersonic speed.
As soon as the god sent that message, the sky-blue veil covering the bridge turned off, and not even a second later, the blood around the bridge grew restless. Cain could feel several eyes on him, some belonging to extremely powerful people, but he kept moving forward and did not take his eyes away from the road. He had covered a third of the path when several figures emerged from the Sea of Blood and lunged toward him. The wave beasts in this part of the Sea of Blood did not get to enjoy human flesh due to the sky-blue veil protecting the bridge and the wall of disciples on the shore, so they reacted like wild and hungry beasts when they saw Cain unprotected. On the island's side of the bridge was a tall young man with blonde hair and a red robe covering his body. Unlike that of the gods and the rest on the shore, his robe had the words "in a disciple" engraved on its back. A nasty smile could be seen on his face when he saw the wave beasts lunging toward Cain, but the next second all the thrill in his heart was replaced by shock. The first beast that reached Cain was a wave champion beast with the form of a giant shark. Its razor-sharp teeth were about to reach the young man when its body split in half. Confusion appeared in the eyes of the blonde man on the island as he could not understand how wave champion beast perished like that, and complete stupefaction assaulted him when he saw the rest of the wave champion beasts lunging toward Cain suffer the same fate. Cain's face showed nothing, and he kept moving forward, with every wave beast lunging toward him, splitting in half before touching his body. Once Cain was less than 500 meters away, the blonde man could see what was really happening.
A sword, no, it is a machete.
The one dividing the horde of wave champion beasts lunging toward Cain from every direction was no other than Slaughter. He moved the machete so fast that those with weak cultivation could not follow it with their eyes. A sense of fear and awe appeared in the heart of the blonde young man when he saw Cain's red eyes focusing on him. Before he could even move a muscle, he felt the Reaper's scythe on his neck, paralyzing him with fear.
Boom!
Cain's speed and momentum were so fast that he generated a shock wave as he stopped right in front of the blonde youth, pushing the rest of the disciples away. The blonde man was told to do all he could to stop Cain from moving forward into the island, and he was more than happy with that mission. Yet, when he saw those red eyes, his instincts screamed danger, and he did not dare to move a single muscle other than to get away from Cain's path. Cain glanced at the blonde man before turning his eyes to the rest of the disciples. His eyes were cold and bursting with a red light full of killing intent. Although he made it look easy, taking care of all those wave beasts took all of Cain's strength, and a single wrong step could have ended in his death. There was no way a typical level 8 wave warrior could have survived that, and if they were willing to take his life, there was nothing wrong with him ending theirs. Alas, I must keep a cold mind. The one behind all this must be waiting for an excuse, but I will not give it to him.
HMPH.
Cain sneered before walking deeper into the island, making his way toward the Blood Pagoda. He kept his bloody machete in the open, ready to handle anything they could send him. That certainly made him look hostile, but he was not in the mood to be friendly right now. As Kane got deeper into Blood Island, he began to analyze his surroundings, and the first thing he noticed was the thin red fog covering the island. Just breathing the red fog made Kane feel energized, and he was sure that a prolonged exposition could affect your constitution and maybe even your genes, especially if you were exposed during your gestation. The mystery about the special lineage in everybody living near the Sea of Blood became a little clearer for Kane. Still, he really wanted to know the origin of the racial superiority mentality. Humans indeed had a tendency to arrogant and narcissistic behavior, but the idea of racial superiority was disdained from the beginning of the Empire when Adam guided people of all ethnicity and ideologies against the dark races. After that, the notion of believing yourself superior for a racial aspect had been considered extremely idiotic. The fact they generated this racial identity behind a lineage made things easier to understand, but still, for a large part of the population to hate those they never saw before, you needed indoctrination. Kane glanced at the people and saw that almost everybody had a red robe indicating their position as disciples, and that around a third of them looked at him with some degree of contempt. The rest of the disciples either ignored him or threw inquisitive gazes, curious about the presence of an outsider on the island. Still, none of them got near Kane, nor the other way around. Kane considered it wiser to reach the Blood Pagoda and speak with the Blood Duke, learning about the situation on Blood Sea before doing anything that could lead to more problems. Luckily, it seemed that the direct clashes stopped after the bridge. The person behind it saw what he wanted to know or was afraid of generating a clash within the island's boundaries. Blood Island was not very large, so Kane did not take long to reach the Blood Pago. When he stood in front of the massive building, he was surprised by the density of the red fog around it. It was an impressive sight, but he did not waste too much time, instead walking into the Blood Pagoda. As soon as he crossed the gates, a familiar face appeared. Bloodless One looked at Kane and nodded before turning around and indicating for the young man to walk with him. Kane walked with Bloodless One as he looked at the first level of the Blood Pagoda. Unlike the Titan Tower, where there was nothing but the teleportation matrix, Kane saw nearly a dozen people drinking and talking there. There was one thing in common with all of the people here. They were Wave Kings and looked at him with hostility. Thank you for listening to the Age of Chaos audio story. Storyfy grows with listeners like you. Support the series by sharing it and join our Telegram for the latest updates.